Greetings, everyone listening, and welcome. Thank you for joining the first ever episode of UCast Studios' newest show, Back to the Box Office. My name is Daniel Bovey, and I'm joined here by the master of the UCast universe, Marcus. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Danny?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Now, given that this is the first time out, I'm going to be making sort of an opening spiel to kind of explain what we think is going to happen here. I say what we think is going to happen, of course, because podcasting, much like life, is full of chaos and uncertainties, and so we'll just try our best to keep things on the rails for this episode and moving forward. So, Back to the Box Office is a show where, as the name might imply, we're going to be going back in time, but we're not going to be using sort of a souped-up DeLorean or a TARDIS or a magical hot tub or any of the other, fun things we see in movies or TV shows. Our vehicle to accomplish this time travel is going to be the Hollywood box office, and our destination is set for the long ago, and some might say idyllic year of 1999. It was when Pokemon first gripped the nation. Ricky Martin was teaching us how to live La Vida Loca, and most pertinent to our purposes here, a lot of great movies were released. It's, cinephiles often say that 1999 might be the greatest year in cinema history. I guess that's open for debate, but I guess we'll see moving forward. So here's how this is going to work. Each week, we'll be jumping back in time to the same week 20 years ago and examine the film that was number one at the box office that week. And we're going to be comparing and contrasting to the film that is number one at the box office in our current timeline, 2019. We'll look at the box office numbers, try to examine what those numbers reveal about how moviegoers' tastes and opinions have changed in the last 20 years, and how the industry itself has shifted during that time. We're obviously going to get into a lot of that today with the two movies that we'll be looking at, which we'll get to in a little bit, and they just could not be more dissimilar. We'll also be going beyond the numbers themselves and kind of getting into what we thought of the films, what we think they would look like if they were to swap eras, swap casts, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And we should also note that, Back to the Box Office is a show. It's going to adapt and evolve as we get feedback from everyone out there listening, and as we also figure out and fine-tune what we want this to be going forward. Now, with all that said, let's get into our topic of discussion for today, where we'll be looking at the movie that's currently number one at the box office. That's Jordan Peele's Us, and the number one movie at the box office over the same week in 1999, which is the Ben Affleck and Sandra Bullock vehicle Forces of Nature, directed by Brown and Hughes. Did I get that name right?
Yeah.
Brown and Hughes? Yeah, okay. Well, Marcus, you want to go over the numbers a bit and see where we stand between those two movies?
Yeah, so, to put in perspective of, let's just say, even opening weekend, right? So the Forces of Nature film, when it debuted March 21st, 1999, it opened at $13.5 million. And that was number one at the box office. So you have to figure, in today's numbers, a $13.5 million opening is fairly bad.
Yes.
It's not, that would be considered a very slow weekend for sure. And Us, in comparison, opened at $71 million.
Right. And even adjusted for inflation, that 13 million is not gonna do much. I don't know I don't have that, readily available, what that adjusted number would be, but I can't imagine it's much different.
Even if it was tripled, it would be only 39 million.
Right.
So, even 39 million today, that's fair, I guess. Well, Forces of Nature, at least online, is listed as having a budget of $75 million. So if it opened at 39 million, I guess that would be good for that, I guess. Right?
That would be incredible for like a road trip rom-com, I think. Yeah,
but then,
certainly.
Well, I guess we could talk about that a little bit. So people are going to say, well, okay, every episode, things today are going to have a higher opening weekend because of a couple factors. For one, there's inflation, so movies cost more. There's IMAX 3D, and also movies in general cost a lot more to make than they cost in the 90s. Overall, in general. But in this particular case, I think what's a little different is that Forces of Nature, according to, I guess Box Office and Wikipedia, or Box Office Mojo, it costs $75 million to make Forces of Nature, and Us is only listed as $20 million to make.
Yeah.
So, well, do you want to go into that a little bit, Danny? Like, some of the economics
Well,
of
that's
like
an
film. Like, is a $20 million film? Obviously, I've heard it said that anything under $100 million is considered low budget by today's standards. Is how low is 20 million though? Like, what is that considered in the industry?
I mean, I don't know what how you categorize it, but I just like that's an incredible distinction between us and Forces of Nature. Like the $75 million budget today, Forces of Nature like represents this sort of mid-tier, mid-budget double A movie that Hollywood doesn't necessarily produce anymore. They either do the big budget blockbuster stuff, the comic books and the other IP adaptations, or they're doing kind of smaller budget. I think so. I think Us probably fits into that latter category of the smaller budget, the Blumhouse strategy, where Blumhouse makes a lot of horror movies that are really moderately budgeted, 5 to 15 to 20 million dollars, and they just do gangbusters at the box office, and so they represent really high like rate of return or return on investment rather. And we should say those numbers, the 75 and the 20 million, they don't include P&A, print and advertising. So the marketing budgets, we don't know about that. It's not really what we're going to get into, but it's still just that I mean, for the type of movie that Forces of Nature is, and if for those who haven't seen Forces of Nature, which I imagine is a lot of people, given that it's 20 years old and wasn't even that popular in its day, it's basically just a your prototypical like road trip romantic comedy. Ben Affleck is sort of a nebbish character who plays things by the book, and he's trying to get to his wedding, and he's kind of a little bit insecure about it. It's uncertain, and he bumps into Sandra Bullock on an airplane, who's the antithesis of his character, kind of like the wild child and a little frazzled. And of course, they run into travel issues with their airplane, and then they're inevitably forced to take car and train back to their destination, in the meantime falling in love. It's a really standard setup. You see it with buddy movies like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and you see it with far better examples of romantic comedies that have done this, like The Sure Thing. It's a Rob Reiner film from, I think, 1985 with John Cusack and Daphne Zuniga. So it's a pretty tried and true formula. And the fact that a movie of that kind in 1999 was getting a $75 million budget and managing to actually be number one at the box office despite of the lackluster overall performance in those weeks, it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty telling of where the industry was at that time, because I think we both agree on this, that if Forces of Nature were made today, it would not ever get a $75 million budget, not even close, nor would it even necessarily get a theatrical release.
No, I think you're totally right. With Forces of Nature, yeah, if that came out today, that would be a straight to Netflix type of film. And it's again to kind of, I mean, here's some numbers that are a little interesting about it. So the film, it opens at $13.5 million, and that accounted for 25% of its total gross domestic, which it made $41 million domestic. But the breakdown, or no, sorry, it made $52 million domestic.
Mm.
So the breakdown for this film, this is actually an interesting part. So the film made $52 million domestic, which is 56% of its total gross, and $41 million internationally, which is 43%. But if you look at the box office for Us, now granted, is it possible that at the time of this recording that Us isn't out in every international market? That's probably true, but it is out in some of them for sure, or quite a few. Us has made 79% of its total gross domestic, and only 20% of its whole gross is foreign.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the fact that Us is it's very much about America. Us as a people, right? And then also just societally where we are. I don't know that necessarily those types of movies play well to international audiences. It's got, it's obviously nothing to do with the fact that it's predominantly African American cast or director, because I think we've seen with movies like Black Panther that obviously has no bearing. It's just the property itself and the subject matter of the film. And Us is a really dense and complex look at who we are as a people at this particular time. And so I think that it's definitely going to be the case that Us makes a predominant amount of its money from the domestic box office.
And I think, to even go along with what you're saying is, international markets, I think they like schlop. I think they don't, I mean, we've talked to people about this before, about the idea that, you have, let's say, people in the Chinese box office or people in China that are viewing movies. They see movies that are in English and not even in subtitles.
Right.
They'll watch Transformers, or they'll watch superhero films, or they'll watch big budget American films, not even subtitled. So, I mean, you have to imagine this. I mean, imagine if you were in the box, imagine if you were in a theater in America and there was a big Chinese release, which over the last several years, there actually have been several really big Chinese releases that aren't really getting any playtime in America because American audiences wouldn't watch them.
Yeah.
But I mean, could you imagine watching a big budget Chinese film with no subtitles? You would be, I mean, I can't imagine Americans sitting through that. I think they'd be bored to
I
death.
don't think. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a foreign movie without subtitles, and I don't think that I have.
Yeah,
There might have been some like Persian movies, honestly, that I'm sure they had to have had the subtitles on. Why would I ever sit through it? I think they're looking for the spectacle. Obviously, if you're going to see a movie like Transformers or something, they're probably better
like
off
Infinity
watching
War,
it without dubbing or subtitles, because there's no point in trying to follow those stories. But I think a lot of it, with Forces of Nature specifically, I don't remember the breakdown you just said. Like 41% of it was international, but
43.
I think that has a lot to do with Ben Affleck and Sandra Bullock being pretty bankable stars at the time. I think Ben Affleck, this was after, obviously it's after Good Will Hunting, sort of his breakout role, and then he had Armageddon.
That's true.
And that was a big hit. And then Sandra Bullock, obviously I think she was the more well-established star at that time, having done Speed and Speed 2 and Hope Floats and Practical Magic. Yeah, so she had a pretty good run there in the early to mid 90s, and probably a lot of that foreign box office, I would imagine, and also the budget was allocated to securing those two stars. And I mean, it's a good thing they did, because the movie, I just rewatched the movie for the first time since I saw it in theaters, in 1999 with my mom, because she used to take me to see all these romantic comedies, which, I loved the genre because of it, but this was not a great example of the genre.
I think every 90s kid, for whatever reason, saw every movie in the theater.
Yeah, and
for some unknown reason.
Definitely watched a lot.
I mean, I remember watching Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, when that came, whenever that was 99, 98. And, I was 7 or 8 years old watching that movie. And it's like, yeah, my parents didn't think anything. Everyone was okay with everything back then.
There's some good lessons to be learned in Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo.
Yeah. I remember, we'll talk about this in a future episode, even The Matrix. I remember watching The Matrix in theaters.
Yeah.
At 8 years old.
Speaking of The Matrix, I just saw an article today about Sandra Bullock. I don't know if you saw this, but the article said that Sandra Bullock was offered the role of Neo in The Matrix and turned it down.
Everybody was offered the role of Neo.
This is funny, because we're talking about Forces of Nature, came out in 1999. The Matrix came out in 1999. It could have been a wildly different year for Sandra Bullock had she elected to do The Matrix instead of starring in Forces of Nature. What an alternate timeline that would be. I mean, wouldn't it be fantastic if Keanu Reeves took her role alongside Ben Affleck in Forces of Nature? That may have altered the course of his career as well.
Or it could have just been a film no one ever even heard of, because it made $8 million.
Well, practically is anyways. So
yeah, you raised a really good point about, and obviously this will be a topic that gets brought up quite often in these reviews of Back to the Box Office, and that is the idea that in the past, actors got paid a lot more money for roles than they are now, starring roles. I mean, I think, wasn't it like, didn't Chris Hemsworth only get paid like $1 million or $2 million for the first Thor?
Yeah, and I think the reason for that is that that was the age of the movie star, and really just properties being driven not by the IP or its relation to an existing media, but to the star itself. And so Sandra Bullock, even more so than the story. I think you put Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks in a movie in the late 90s, movie's gonna open, and regardless of what it is. I mean, Vanilla Sky, for God's sake, made, I don't know how much money. It made a good amount of money for the type of movie that it was.
And then, I mean, even though you have bad films like Vanilla Sky, I mean, you have a film like Jerry Maguire, which was one of the highest grossing films of the year that it came out. I forgot what year, if it was 96.
96, I think. Yeah.
And a film like Jerry Maguire would never be in the top 10 today. There's just no way that type of film would be more of a mid-budget film. It would have had the same fate as that. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. The film where Tom Cruise is the pilot.
American Made?
Yeah, American Made. It probably would have had the same box office fate as that movie.
Possible.
So I think another thing too, I wanted to bring about or talk about with the numbers. So, because there's the whole idea of, inflation again, to talking about that. So Forces of Nature, it opened it opened in 2,000 theaters,
and
it made $6,500 on average per theater. Again, to kind of put the numbers in perspective, so it opened in 3,700 theaters, and it averaged $19,000 per theater.
Yeah,
so it averaged a little less than 3 times what Forces of Nature did. Now, granted, there is inflation, so that part is true. There's also, I think, Us opened in IMAX 3D, right?
I don't know about 3D. It's probably in IMAX screens, but so the ticket prices are higher. I mean, ticket prices are just higher across the board.
Yeah, they're higher. I mean, but if you look at it, I mean, it did make, so I mean, it did sell more. Sold more tickets on average in its theaters, even if you adjust for inflation, than Forces of Nature while Forces of Nature was out.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's the case. Us is just a more successful movie writ large. I mean, the point is, not to necessarily compare. If we're pitting them against each other, if Forces of Nature opened on the same weekend as Us, I'm pretty sure the same result would occur. And there's no universe in which Forces of Nature is going to, especially if it came out today. I mean, maybe it'll be different if Us came out in 1999. Like, if they came out in the same weekend in 1999, is Us still like the runaway number one movie, or does the fact that Sandra Bullock is in it and Ben Affleck versus two relatively unknown actors, at least two actors who have not yet been the lead of a big movie, because this is Lupita Nyong'o's first starring role, despite her being an Oscar-winning actress.
Yeah.
And Winston Duke, I mean, we've seen him as M'Baku, right? And
that's about it. I mean, you're right. To the average American box office, or I keep saying box office goer, to the movie theater going, American audience, I mean, these people, they're not household names. Winston Duke
no.
Neither. I mean, they've, like you said, they recognize them from stuff, but I mean, if you were to do, a Google Trends search for them before Us came out, neither one of them was super high. They would have been lower on it.
Yeah.
But so kind of, I guess, not necessarily having to do, a movie review of either one of these, but what were your overall thoughts, I guess, quickly, of each film, Us and Forces of Nature? I guess maybe in comparison to when they came out, maybe instead of doing direct, head to head, maybe what was your thoughts of Forces of Nature compared to what came after that, or came out around the same time?
I mean, so the movie that immediately, let's talk about what was in the top 5 that week. So we're talking about like March 26th, I think, 1999. So Forces of Nature was number 1. Analyze This was number 2, the Billy Crystal, Robert De Niro comedy. That was in its second week. True Crime, which is, I don't even know what that is, was number 3. Baby Geniuses was number 4. I don't know if you recall that gem of a film. And number 5 was actually Cruel Intentions, which that movie's actually held up relatively well, and it's kind of attained this cult status. I think they're actually doing like a 20th anniversary re-release in theaters. I don't know if it was this week or it's last week, but so that's what was going on there. I mean, for that movie landscape, I think Forces of Nature is sort of par for the course. There's nothing particularly special about it, which is odd that we're talking about it in a year that's kind of noted for being this landmark year for cinema, right?
Well, you should bring up the film that comes out after Forces of Nature, after it did its 2 weeks as number 1, was The Matrix.
Right. So that, I mean, you cannot
it's sandwiched between Analyze This and The Matrix.
What a crazy transition, right? So in our next, this the next edition of this podcast, hopefully, we'll be talking about The Matrix and versus whatever, you know,
It looks like it'll probably be
probably
Dumbo.
Dumbo, and that's an interesting comparison to make too. But yeah, I mean, how do you go from a $13 million opening for the most
Generic.
movie? Yeah, I mean, this is honestly, I feel like if we didn't have genre, this movie could best be described as a moving picture because that's literally all it is. It's just these two on screen together moving about.
I mean, and it's also it doesn't look good. I mean, it doesn't look good if somebody's gonna say, well, all movies in the '90s look like crap. This doesn't look good
there-
by '90s comparison.
There are definitely very strange aesthetic choices made. I was noted like the first thing
Yeah.
I noticed just without the color palette in this movie. There's a lot of grays and there's a lot of
hate
like
it.
deep blues, and it makes it look clinical. It makes it feel more like a commercial for some kind of like prescription medication
I can see
than
that.
than a romantic comedy. When I think of romantic comedies, I want it to be sort of vibrant and colorful and lively. This movie has a very strange aesthetic, and it's kind of like a Michael Mann like drug movie, like or like The Insider, kind of a grainy quality
I
to
can
it.
see
That,
that.
but it's not. It's it's supposed to be a lighthearted romantic comedy. So yeah, I don't know. So I think Forces of Nature fits in sort of into that vein. And this is coming off of 1998 when Shakespeare in Love won Best Picture over Saving Private Ryan, and I guess that's kind of where that's. I don't know what that says about where we were as a country or a society at that time, but maybe people were just looking for a lighthearted kind of fluff experience in the face of I don't know, Bill Clinton's acquittal. I mean, what was going on really
Well, I mean,
big in the news at that time?
Well, it's weird because in the '90s, I mean, you have films that, I mean, people might not want to say that they're classics because they came out so recently, but there was a number of classics that came out in '99, like you mentioned. I mean, you have films like, like we talked about, like The Matrix, that basically the whole film was telling you everything in your life is a lie, and then also that same year you had Fight Club come out, which is
Yeah.
obviously talked a lot about reality and things, but yeah, I think you're right. For Forces of Nature, the film is, it's just so bland. I mean, it's kind of shot weird. I will say the one thing that did surprise me about it is that Ben Affleck ends up marrying the girl he was supposed to get married to. That film, you would think the setup would be, oh, he falls in love with this girl, Sandra Bullock's character, and he realizes that he's not happy with his life. But in this, he actually realized that he loved his fiance. So I guess that part is good. How would you compare Us to other films that have, I guess, more modern, maybe last couple years?
I mean, so Us. I mean, just looking at Us with the top in the top 5 for this week. So Us was number 1. Captain Marvel was number 2. Wonder Park, the animated Paramount film, was number 3. 5 Feet Apart was number 4. I think that's a literary adaptation with the kind of.
It's like The Fault in Our Stars.
Right, it's that
Yeah,
sort of
it's exactly
sick
the same
teen
thing.
falling in love genre. It seems to be a subgenre now.
Yeah.
And then How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World was number 5, and so I mean it's definitely
It's quite a bit different. Than those.
there's so what we see there is there's 2 obviously major kind of tentpole movies from different studios with Captain Marvel and How to Train Your Dragon. And Us also has the advantage of being now part of this. Jordan Peele has really cemented his brand as a director, and so part of the reason I think the movie opened so well was, I guess, the marketing was well done, and so enticed people to see it, but also just the success of Get Out and people loving that movie so much, and voraciously wanting to see or consume his next project, and so that drove, I think, a lot of the interest and drove the box office numbers to what they were, because I think it exceeded even the more generous estimates going into the weekend.
Because I thought I saw estimates for 50 million, maybe like I guess the week of the release, maybe on a Monday or Tuesday. I feel like I saw 50 to 60 million, and even on Thursday, I thought they were still saying 60. And it opened at 71.
On Sunday, actually, the estimates on Sunday morning were still low because they didn't. I think they were keeping it at around 60. I guess it had a strong Sunday. We'd have to look at the daily breakdown. I don't know, but Us is just an interesting. I think people may have thought that going into it that it was more just it was going to be a horror movie, I mean, being that it was Jordan Peele, you kind of assume that there would be some social commentary to it, and there definitely is. But that's the point. That's the part of it that I think I find so interesting. Why the movie, in my mind, has legs, not necessarily box office legs, but in terms of rewatchability and like, kind of
'Cause, you know,
reassessing what it is or deconstructing it.
yeah, because it's hard to know what the message is. Like with Get Out, you're right. Like it's a little bit more like it's a little bit more on the nose. You kind of have an idea. And when I watched Us, the person I watched with, I looked over to him after the movie, and I said, I'm like, what was this about? I mean, there's so many. I've seen all these different articles, their interpretations of it, and I mean, you and I, we talked about this off camera before, what our interpretations are, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it feels like to me, Us kind of feels like a full length movie version of an episode of The Twilight Zone, which is fitting that Peele is doing both.
Yeah.
But I don't know what else to compare it to. Honestly, don't. I mean, I heard somebody, I guess it was Red Letter Media, they said this in the review of Us, that they kind of said that Jordan Peele, that he's this generation's M. Night Shyamalan, but like in the beginning.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, like even M. Night Shyamalan, you know, he would do things where you're like, okay, that's kind of like skirting towards it's like absurd a little, but it works though, right?
Yeah.
And you know, basically Get Out was, in a sense, you know, it's being John Malkovich. It takes elements of that, takes elements of this and puts it together, and it was good. And Us, you know, if it had a different soundtrack, if it had like that, you know, that old like do 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 kind of music, like you would laugh, right? I mean, the idea is it sounds ridiculous if you just describe to someone when you're watching, like this is really good, right? But I mean, I hope he doesn't turn it into M. Night Shyamalan at the end or
No.
the midpoint
I mean,
of
this is-
Shyamalan.
It's certainly funny. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan, I guess you can make the argument that there is this, in the sense that there's like a twist ending, and he's kind of had that 2 times in a row, but I don't think it's fair to compare him to M. Night Shyamalan, like, only because these movies are so driven by the undercurrent or the subtext, not necessarily just what we're seeing on screen. And
Well, I guess I just meant more of like the brand of like it
Oh,
feels
yeah.
like the brand in the world, like especially you know when you watch The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable and even Signs. I like Signs a lot, where it feels different than other films. It's kind of hard to say, is it a straight horror or thriller? Kind of like you said for Us, I feel like it's the same way where you know, is it a horror film? I mean, there's horror elements. It's a part thriller. I mean, it's not a horror in the sense of you're going to be jumping out of your seat scared. When I watched it, I didn't see anybody do that. I mean, there's
No.
parts that are hard to watch.
And that's
But-
why I'm curious what the box office is going to be like this coming weekend and moving forward, because I don't know. I think the cinema score, the audience score, was like a B afterwards, which is, it's not terrible, but it's not glowing.
No.
And I think it might suffer a little bit from what I'd like to call the mother syndrome, where it was marketed as this, you know, kind of straight horror movie, like what's going on in this house, or like a home invasion movie, and it is that, but it also is much more than that, and it leaves a lot open to interpretation in order to spur discussion, which is fantastic, and I think speaks to like where we are societally in this in the post 2016 election America, where there's a lot of division and there's a lot of dogmatism on both sides. This movie is kind of asking us to examine ourselves and look at who our enemies are, and I think that's really interesting. Got no bearing necessarily on the box office. I just think that was a happy accident that people happened to go see this, and hopefully they were like, "Hey, let me think about this a little deeper."
That's a good point. So before we get done with this, yes, idea for a quick little game, and that being, if we were to swap these two films, cast or whatever, if Forces of Nature came out today, who would it star? And if Us came out in 1999, who would it star?
Yeah.
So we just have this idea of this little game. So, Danny, do you want to go first with if I guess let's do let's do Us if it came out in 1999.
1999
that.
Us. Okay, yeah. So
So who would you have be the dad?
I have a couple of a few different choices here for the dad specifically. My first inkling going back to 1999 for the dad would be Will Smith.
Okay.
And I think that Will Smith, you know, he's got this fantastic comic, obviously, background, and so and Winston Duke's character in the movie is sort of that comic relief. He kind of represents Us, where he's like, this is ridiculous, what's going on? But then he also at the same time really like he's able to kick ass. You know, either whether it's his doppelganger or the other father. So I would think Will Smith would be a good choice. How about you for the role?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for the dad, if I'm thinking, if I'm thinking 1999, I guess I'd go Lawrence Fishburne. Fishburne? Gosh, I can't say his name right. Yeah, I guess I'd go with him, but I don't know if he would make the character seem too smart. 'Cause Lawrence Fishburne at that time, he kind of seemed like a smart actor.
I think Lawrence Fishburne's got this gravitas. That,
Yeah, that would
as
be
an
the only
actor,
problem. Would be
and you lose sort. I mean, not that he's not capable of being comedic, because I don't know if you've seen him on Blackish. Like
Yeah.
he's pretty funny, but I don't know, just the scene like where Winston Duke is sitting in bed, and trying to seduce Lupita Nyong'o, and it's just really funny. And I don't know that I can definitely see Will Smith doing that. I can't really envision.
well, because Lawrence
Lawrence
Fishburne.
Fishburne.
Yeah, I mean, if we're thinking like, he would just seem, yeah, like you said, maybe too charismatic. But I know I was trying to think. I don't know. I feel like I think that could be hard. But okay, how about for the mom? Who would you have?
Well, in this Will Smith version of the movie,
Okay.
my immediate thought went to his wife Jada Pinkett Smith. I don't know if I think they were married. I don't know if they were married at that time, but either way, I just thought, oh, might be a good role for her. But then she never really had that kind of like starring turn in that way. So I don't know if how that would work. I mean, I'm sure she has the capacity, right? She's a decent actor. Movies like Set It Off, it's a good movie.
I have, if again, for the 99, I'm going with either Alicia Silverstone or Stacey Dash from Clueless. So the two main girls from Clueless I would be open to.
Man, I really have trouble envisioning Alicia Silverstone. I mean, she's like America's sweetheart.
Yeah.
I think she can. I don't know if she could do the the double, because that role is so intense, and it just requires such a range of emotions that we've never seen Alicia Silverstone, to my knowledge, uh, express. I mean, I didn't see the Diary of a Wimpy Kid 2, so maybe she's found it in that project. She was in that, right? That's like the last thing I saw her in.
She
I
may
don't
have
even
been
know.
in that.
And then Stacey Dash. I mean, I honestly, didn't she like run for political office?
Yeah, I think that she announced that she was going to run, but then she didn't run. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I have not seen her do any roles but Clueless.
Yeah, I don't know about those two. I don't think the movie would work.
Well, if you put Alicia
on the same
Silverstone,
level that it does. So
how about who would you? I don't know the friend's name. He's Tim from Tim and Eric. Who would you have be him in 99? I got two options. I have John Leguizamo,
okay,
and then I also have Bobcat from Hercules.
I have no idea.
He's the guy with the scratchy voice. He's
Hercules, the Disney
the animated
movie?
film. Yeah, he's one of the two little henchmen. He has that
okay.
voice.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, you go check it out. Just check out Bobcat voice.
I
on
never
Hercules.
want to check out Hercules again.
Those are like two guys I could think of for the late 90s.
I honestly didn't even think about the kind of secondary family there. The one that I thought would do really well in the role of Winston Duke, like the father, was Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage is probably, if the more of these we do, and we take movies from now to 99, I can't think of a better, 99 Nicolas Cage. That's pretty like, how do you beat that?
Well, and 99 Nicolas Cage is the Nicolas Cage that just did Face Off, Con Air, and The Rock.
The Rock.
He did the. There's never been an actor that's had 3 successive action films that's the greatest
caliber, like the triumvirate of it's incredible. And I really think Nicolas Cage, especially when he's like, the whole boat thing, and when he's got to confront himself. Like, imagine Nicolas Cage fighting an evil Nicolas Cage and just losing it. I mean, going absolutely.
He would have to be the star. He'd have to.
I think he would steal his scene.
Yeah, if you were gonna do Us in 1999 with Nicolas Cage, he would be the star, and he would take. Yeah, he would be the lead.
Last year, Nicolas Cage was in a movie called Mom and Dad. I don't know if it was Selma Blair, and it's kind of like the basic story is that like the parents in this town all start to go crazy and want to kill their kids. And Nicolas Cage has that. He pretty much does this. I mean, he's like going after his family like a madman, as he does. And that's Nicolas Cage in 2018 after suffering many many terrible film, not necessarily performances, but just terrible films themselves. But Nicolas Cage in '99, I think he might be good cast against anyone. And then in that version of the movie, I thought, well, who could legitimately carry this movie from Lupita Nyong'o's role, because it's just a really meaty and it's a really intense role. Like I think she did a fantastic job. She's an incredible actress. And I was thinking maybe Jodie Foster in 1999. Like
No, I
she
could
has
see
definitely
that.
the range to, she can do the evil thing and be really vulnerable and kind of broken and have those turns. I think she's definitely a strong choice. I don't know that she and Nicolas Cage would be doing the same movie.
I think you'd have to go one or the other.
Yeah, maybe. But
All right. Now, how about for Forces of Nature? So I think we both agree that if it came out today, it would, instead of having a $75 million budget, it would have a $7 million budget. And probably straight to Netflix. I have for Ben Affleck's character, who in the film Forces of Nature is named Ben. I don't like
Yeah.
that. Whenever the actor in real life has the same name as their character. I would say probably do one of the Hemsworth brothers.
Liam or Chris.
Yeah, I feel like either
Or
one.
the third one, maybe. What's his name?
Is there? I didn't even know there was a
I
third.
think there's a third one.
Is that like the third Wilson brother? You know, there's Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson. There's a third. That's
Probably
was in
exactly
Ball
like
Rockets,
that.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Who would you choose for Ben?
For some reason my initial thought went to Miles Teller, but I don't know why.
I could see that.
Like I could see it maybe.
He did do that one romantic comedy that came up like 5 years ago with Michael B. Jordan. That was the first one I
What
saw
If?
Michael B. Jordan.
Was it What If? Or I think that was
Is
the
that
one
what
with
it's called?
Daniel Radcliffe. I don't remember.
Yeah, there's some film where there's the two of them, and then there's I forgot who the third actor is. He's also a younger guy, and they're all friends, but they're dating girl. They kind of have like
yeah.
relationship
I mean,
issues, but they're friends, and it's their three
Yeah,
stories
I just
in
think
one
like
movie.
because the character, he kind of seems like stiff, and I think Miles Teller could do that kind of shtick pretty well. And then there's a scene where, in the movie, Ben Affleck, he for some reason they need to get money to buy like a car, and they go into the strip club, and so Sandra Bullock is gonna strip, but then they're not interested in her stripping because it turns out they're in a gay strip club, or just a gay bar, I think. So Ben Affleck actually gets up on the pool table and starts dancing in really awkward fashion, and I could see Miles Teller doing that. I don't know why.
How about Sandra Bullock? Who would you go with?
So I think maybe Zoe Deutsch. She's Leah Thompson's daughter, the mom from Back to the Future, and she was in that movie The Setup. It was like a Netflix romantic comedy that came out last year that was pretty well received. I think her. I don't really know. Do you have any other choices?
I mean, I was thinking, maybe like a Scarlett Johansson, because I mean, if we're talking about the idea of having like a female lead that's really well known, like a household name, I feel like there aren't really a ton of female actresses under the age of 30 that are really well known like that. I mean, there's Jennifer Lawrence, but like household name, I feel like I know Scarlett Johansson's older than 30, but I feel like she's probably one of the biggest female actors today.
Yeah.
Or the biggest. I don't really know in terms of the scaling of it, but I feel like she's got to be one of the closest actresses working today that's close at as big in popularity as Sandra Bullock was in 99.
Yeah, but
something I could think
the
of.
only issue with that I see is that like we said, this movie is not going to this movie in
that's the
2019
problem.
is not going to draw a budget that could probably afford Scarlett Johansson. And if she's going to do a small budget movie, it's going to be a movie like The Skin I Live In, like a prestige kind of art house movie, not
your run of the mill
generic
like
rom-com.
No.
And so yeah, the only other one I thought of was Aubrey Plaza, because I think she's got that kind of wild energy that I think the character needs. And then I just like O'Shea Jackson Jr. I kind of want to see him in anything, especially in a rom-com. I mean, he kind of already did. He was in Ingrid Goes West with Aubrey Plaza. I don't know if you saw that movie with Elizabeth Olsen, and it was a really good movie. Not a rom-com, but I like their chemistry together, their energy. I would like to see that.
Yeah, I could see that. I think on his Twitter he has it listed that he was in Straight Outta Compton for 2 seconds. That's the only thing he lists on his profile.
O'Shea Jackson?
Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, wait, he's been in other stuff.
Yeah, well,
yeah, but I just don't know why his Twitter profile said that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that basically does it for the main cast. I mean, yeah, I guess there's Mara Tierney.
Maura Tierney.
yeah.
Yeah. I really like her.
I mean,
as
I
an
guess
actress.
the closest would be the girl from Big Bang Theory. That's the closest I could think of because literally, what's her name?
Kaylee Cuoco.
Yeah, I mean, she was in The Wedding Ringer.
Yeah.
Which she basically does the same role, but
Similar
just
role.
as the bad guy kind of. So I guess
Yeah.
in this film she would be the good guy wife,
Mm.
fiance.
You know what I was thinking? Forces of Nature. Like, it's not exactly a similar comp, but there was a movie in 2018 called The Layover with Kate Upton and Alexandra Daddario, and it's like it's not really a romantic comedy. It's more about the friendship of the two female leads, but it's like a love triangle type thing. But it's the same setup where they're traveling somewhere, and the plane has an issue, and so they have to end up not hitchhiking, but they travel with this guy. And that to me felt like a good modern equivalent in what that movie would be. And that movie was released in theaters, and I think it was directed by William H. Macy.
What?
It's a very strange.
William H. Macy.
Yeah, I mean he's got some issues that he's dealing with at the present moment with his with Felicity Huffman and the whole college admissions scandal.
Oh, I didn't even know he was caught up in that.
Oh yeah, I don't think he was named as. Anyways, we don't need to get into that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's a good example of how that movie might play out today. And it's not pretty.
Fun fact: the biggest superhero film of 1999 was Mystery Men.
That is a fun fact.
I don't know. I just made that
Apropos
up.
of nothing, but it's not real.
No, I was just saying, how much material is there if we're gonna say the biggest superhero film of 1999 was Mystery Men, and then the biggest superhero films of today, they would eat Mystery Men for dinner.
Was that even a soup? I never saw Mystery Men. That's the one with Ben Stiller.
Yeah, but it's like it has Jeffrey Rush. Like it
Yeah.
it actually did. It was 99. Wow, I was just taking a guess there. Came out in
Janine
July.
Garofalo, is that the one?
Yeah, and it had William H. Macy is in it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Jeffrey Rush is the bad guy.
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wow, gosh, I haven't even thought of Mystery Men in years.
Yeah, we should do a special podcast about this Mystery Men.
That might have been the biggest superhero film of 99. I don't even, because superhero films weren't even coming out.
Yeah, they. I mean, when did?
I think X-Men came out 2000. I think.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 1 was 2002.
Spider-Man. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know.
Jeez, William H. Macy gets around, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, definitely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you everyone for listening to the first episode of Back to the Box Office. Make sure you come back for future episodes. And if you like the discussion, leave a comment and like the video and subscribe to the channel. Danny, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.